There is something eerily prescient that James Michener wrote about in his novel Texas that is happening now in 2024, looking towards the future. And it goes along with the statement, does life imitate art or art imitate life? And to establish James Michener's credentials in writing about things that could come to pass, in James Michener's Caravans about Afghanistan, the preceding paragraphs in that novel describes a woman stoned to death for adultery. Why don't they stop it? I demanded angrily. If they tried to stop it, Miller Sahib, the men you watch today on their brothers in the hills would storm Kabul and kill you and me and Moheb Khan and the king too. Impossible, I cried. They have done so in the past, Noor insisted. In Kabul, we have perhaps 2,000 educated Afghans who know that things like this must end. In Kandahar, maybe 500, but in Ghazni, none. We're outnumbered 12 million madmen to 3,000, perhaps 5,000. I'm not sorry you saw the execution, Miller Sahib. You'll understand my country better. Will things go on like this indefinitely? I asked. No, Noor said firmly. Across the Oxus, people just like us used to behave the way you saw today. Public executions supervised by mullahs were common in places like Samarkand. But the communists from Moscow and Kiev said they had to stop. The Chowdhury was outlawed. Women were freed. Miller, we have 10 years to halt these terrible things. If we don't, Russia is going to come down here and stop them for us. Does the government realize this? Of course. Do you think men like Shah Khan are stupid? The government knows it, but 12 million citizens don't. Noor rose and stamped impatiently about the room, picking his way through our scattered gear. Don't you understand the problems that face a man like me? Right now in Ghazni, a few hours' journey from Kabul, every man who participated in that stoning fully expects to continue doing so for the rest of his life. If you told them tonight that you were going to halt all this, they would kill you. All right, James Michener wrote that in 1960, Caravans. And that line, if we don't, Russia is going to come down here and stop them for us. Russia did invade Afghanistan in 1979. Um, Now they were defeated. They had to withdraw in the late 80s, and who knows whether or not they did try to stop. But that prediction in a novel of Russia invading Afghanistan from the north and in placing communist rule on Afghanistan, one might say was a prescient prediction. So now we flip over to James Michener's novel in Texas, and this was copyrighted and printed in 1985, pages 1016 to 1017. Senorita Muzquiz jumped on this unfortunate affair as a major topic for her two classes to analyze, and with her careful guidance, the young Hispanics learned of the government's brutality and of the heroism of the Mexicans, legal or otherwise, who had worked their way so far north without having been detected. They are the heroes of our conquest, and like my father, they will stay. Studiously, she avoided uttering the word revolution, and even she voiced it silently to herself. She always followed it with pacifico. She did not visualize gunfire or rebellion because there was no need. Everything she desired was unattainable through slow but persistent penetration. For the present, she did not include Texas cities as far north as Dallas in her looming confederacy, at least not for the remainder of the century. The Anglos are too strong, but I see it happening sometime after 2030. When she assured personal friends that it must happen, she called it the inevitable triumph of the marriage bed. Mexican women have many children, Anglos don't. Then on page 1023, a television crew newsman overhearing the argument asked her, But if the Mexicans and Central Americans keep pressing in, won't this mean that eventually most of Texas will become Mexican? And she said, looking defiantly into the camera, if as Hispanic mothers in Central America have many babies and Anglo mothers in Texas have few, I suppose there will have to be an irresistible sweep of immigrants to the north. Yes, Texas will become Spanish. So that is what we are seeing for sure since 1985, and it's 2024 now, and 2023 or 2030 is in the future, and the tide of people coming up from Mexico and Central America and South America doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. So, along with that revolution, there's also the idea of a republic. How is that all going to shake loose? Nobody knows. But is this an example of art imitating life or life imitating art? Because you can imagine that James Michener probably wrote that. Um, it probably wouldn't have been too hard to imagine that scenario, given the swing of people moving back and forth and the drawing of borders. But since he was an academic and he was on universities, it's also not beyond the imagination that he actually had a conversation similar to that in the halls of the university with probably someone of Hispanic origins, and just noting that this trend was going to happen. Anyways, it's interesting to have seen that in Michener's book, Texas, and he does have credentials in being able to look at situations and write novels that turn out to be true.